Decepticons are the gates. Decepticons in the air. Decepticons inside the walls. Decepticons, Decepticons, Decepticons. If we beat them off the walls, then they're still in the air. If we shoot them out of the air, then they're still at the gate. So where does that leave us? Nowhere. That's where.
Hey y'all, my name's LinkFrostimus, and today we're gonna be taking a look at Studio Series Blurr. Here's his robot mode, and he's looking good. Now, transform! Vehicle mode, looks pretty good. He can go fast. He's perfect. You can't go wrong with Blurr. Thanks for watching, subscribe. Blurr is a character that made his debut in the Transformers the movie, whose only personality trait is that he's a crackhead. Coked out of his mind, Blurr lives his life in 5 times speed. Voiced by the fastest talking guy, John Moshida Jr., his fast speech pattern is an iconic part of the character, but him being fast is the only character he really has, and honestly, that wasn't enough to make me like him. In fact, his extreme speed kinda made me think he was annoying, and quite frankly, he's my second least favorite newcomer that the movie introduced. But I still liked his design, and even though I did talk down on Titan's Return, I still think they delivered a pretty decent Blurr toy, minus the colors. So when Studio Series Blurr was announced and seemed to be a fixed version of Titan's Return Blurr, I was down, but a closer look at the mold made me realize that he has similar issues that Studio Series Cup has, thus making me more skeptical. So are my feelings on Cup the same as my feelings on Studio Series Blurr? Let's find out. Here we have Blurr in his robot mode, and I will say right now that his colors are great. That was my biggest issue with Titan's Return Blurr, and they absolutely nailed it here. But unfortunately, the proportions and again the face, what the hell, took a hit. Let's start with his face. Bruh. His lips are puffed. His cheekbones are puffed. His face is hella chiseled and hella long. You wanna know who he looks like? Watch this. I think I see the problem with his face and Cup's face now. They're given exaggerated facial features that in the end make them look too human instead of any bit robotic. In Cup's case, he looks too ugly, and in Blurr's case, he looks too handsome. He kinda looks like a typical male model and, oh god, I kinda wanna kiss him. This really sucks though, especially because the box artist totally nailed his face right here. Whoever the artist is, bravo. Great face, great representation of Blurr. It's just too bad that it doesn't carry over to the toy. They screwed up. Now the helmet. Yeah, I think it's lame. The design makes it look like he's rocking the George Washington. And the fin on top, it kinda looks goofy. It's all still sculpted really well though, with some nice detail, and they even added this yellow paint here, but they didn't put it on his fin. Come on, you guys. And thankfully too, he has some great light piping. But that's because the back of his head is cast in this transparent blue plastic. This means we miss out on more helmet detail, and it makes him look weird when you look at him from his profile. I mean, we do get light piping though, so I think it's a worthy sacrifice. And lastly, he's got a neck. I don't know if this adds to his unnatural look, but yeah, he's got a neck. Yeah, it does. His neck's too long. Now to his body. Beautiful sculpts throughout. Everything here looks great. His arms, his legs, his chest, beautiful. Especially his windshield piece right here. Nice transparent plastic that allows us to see the details inside. Mwah! Now before the proportions, I want to talk about the paint. Like I said, good colors, but the paintwork isn't exactly what I would like. There's some paint mishaps on his face and his neck. The paint separation on his lower legs isn't clean at all. The chest has a bit of sloppy paint right there, and the Autobot insignia is... it's chipped! I don't know if this was like this out of the box or if I accidentally did this myself, but be careful. The paint isn't bad though, I'm just kinda nitpicking. Now to the proportions. I think the upper half of the body looks fine, maybe his chest is a little too wide, but I think the outlier here are his legs. They're too skinny. I think he would look a lot better if his thighs and shins were bulked up because, as he looks right now, he looks a bit top heavy. And I think this is emphasized because his chest might be a little too wide. I'll talk about this a bit later, but I'ma say it now, his hands look weird. But other than that, those are the problems I have with the proportions. Everything else about him looks good, like his profile, really nice slim back, and a great head-on view of his back as well. And I will admit, I still think he does look a bit off, especially compared to Titan's Return Blurr's proportions and his original animation model, but his look is not as bad as Cup's, definitely not as bad. So if you look past his off-looking proportions, a decent looking robot mode. The face will always be there to haunt you though. Now let's deck him out with his accessories. First we got his blaster, which is actually based off of the one he uses in the movie. It looks cool, the details are nice, but I don't like the color. Pegs into either hand, and looks good for some one-handed shoot-offs, but if you try to get him to hold it with both hands like in the movie, I don't know, it kinda looks stupid here. Next we got the welding torch. This is from the scene where the gang tries to fix their ship after crashing into the planet of junk. Kinda a weird accessory to include though, it's not iconic or anything. It's again molded in a dull white color. Nice detail though, and pegs into either hand. There's nothing to repair though. And last, his backdrop. Battle of Autobot City. This is when he receives his orders from Ultra Magnus while the Decepticons lay siege, and it's a nice piece of art with a detailed cityscape, a light blue sky contrasted with dark stormy clouds, and even explosions in the background. However, I never really associated this scene with Blurr, and I kinda wish they included a backdrop of the base he was shooting from later in the battle. Still, a neat backdrop. And as for storage, nope. Nothing. And those are his accessories. They're okay, would have been a lot better if they were more colored, but still, cool stuff. But what good are accessories if you can't pose? Ball joint at the neck allowing for swivels and wiggles, but it can't really look up or down. A nice soft ratchet that allows his arms to rotate a full 360, and a separate hinge to make his arms move this far out. Damn, this is cool. Bicep swivel, 90-degree elbow bend, and now the fists. So here's a closer look. They look small and weird. They do have a wrist swivel though, but as we see in the transformation, the entire piece of this forearm is connected to the bottom of the fist. Not only is this connection ugly, but it only allows the wrists to swivel away from his body. We got a wrist swivel, but at what cost? Waist swivel, legs move up this far, back this far, and do the full splits. Thigh swivel, knees bend at 90 degrees, toes have a nice ratcheted upward bend, and a nice pivot. So Blurr's poseability is good. The wrists are annoying, but he still has a good amount of modern articulation improvements. However, remember how I said he looks a bit off? Unfortunately, he looks worse when you try to pose him. I don't know if it's his limbs or his body or whatever, but when you try to put him in an action pose, he looks even more off. There's some poses that make him look good, but it seems that there are more poses that further show how weird his proportions are. You do have a flight stand port behind his wee-wee, where you can put him up in the air, but being a speedy boy, I recommend using it as support for sprinting poses, and this looks great. As for his feel though, it's not bad, but it's not great either. He's solid, but there's some fiddly bits. His chest spins for transformation, but there isn't a way to secure it in place, so it can move around a bit. The pieces under his forearms clearly have a tab right here, but it doesn't hold together at all, and it's really loose, so it moves everywhere. The knees can feel a little weak, they're still better than cups, but the thigh swivel is fairly loose. Loose enough that the legs can move farther apart after you set them down. The Studio Series 86 figures have all set a really high bar for feel, and unfortunately, Blurr isn't on par with them. I hope these are just issues on my copy, but still, beware. Now for size comparisons. Cyclonus, MP44, and Cup and Hot Rod. They look great together. Really fits in with the Studio Series 86 cast, but by himself, he's a bit lacking. And that's pretty much his robot mode. Compared to Titan's Return Blurr, we took one step forward with better colors, but a lot of steps back everywhere else. This is still a serviceable Blurr though. It looks like the character and it feels like the character. But again, with the other Studio Series 86 figures, he leaves a lot to be desired. But I still think he's cool, and I do prefer this look over Titan's Return Blurr, but only slightly. And that's the robot mode. Now, let's transform! So here's his Cybetronian hover car mode, and it looks good. Pretty good representation of Blurr's alt mode. The transformation is cool. It's a little difficult to peg stuff in, but it's fun, and it does remind me of how you transform Titan's Return Blurr. And yeah, nice looking vehicle mode. The color especially pops out here. The contrast between the light and dark blues is really nice, and that clash of blues makes the white windshield all the more juicy. But the hood's dark blue is a different shade of blue compared to the rest of the dark blues. Come on. The details are nice. Not much new is added though, except for this fin, the seat, they're sculpted for a dashboard with no detail on it, and the back of the legs come into play in the back of the car. But to make up for that, the details we already saw in robot mode are further emphasized here. Really nice paneling, everything looks crisp and clean. And moving to the back, the shoulder top exhausts become the actual exhausts of the car. And with that, along with the speedy blue color, the fin, and the cool aerodynamic curves of the vehicle, this hover car looks fast, and that's appropriate for the character. To make him look even more like a speed demon, his thrusters are blast effect compatible. Sweet look. And this thing's proportions make it look great from all angles. He does kind of have a bit of junk sticking out from the bottom when you look at him from the side profile, but taking a look under the car, wow, probably the best bottom management I've seen in a while. It's hard to tell which parts are his robot parts. Bravo, hashtag. And yep, that's it for the hover car. Looks good, really faithful to his original design. Really cool and fun mode. But what about his accessories? You can actually tab them onto the bottom of the front hood. With no robot mode storage, this is greatly appreciated. And if you ignore the peg of the gun sticking out really far, this actually looks like a pretty natural integration of the weapon in the vehicle. It looks neat, and we're done with that. Because he's a hover car, he can't roll, but if you have a flight stand, you can peg it into him and get him slightly off the ground. No, you can't. The flight stand port is blocked. Missed opportunity. But he does feel nice and holds together super solidly, unlike the robot mode. Size comparisons. Cyclonus, MP10, Cup, Hot Rod. These three cars look phenomenal together. Oh my goodness. With my problems with the robot modes for this guy and Cup, at least they both have great alt modes. And yeah, this thing is great. Looks great, feels great, and stands out on its own as a good alternate mode. Again, yeah, missed opportunity for a flight stand, but still it looks superb. The colors and detailing create a fantastic representation of classic Blurr's vehicle mode. Now, let's transform him back and give him my final rating. And, yeah, I feel the same way about him with Cup. He's just meh. I still don't understand how they screwed up his face and his proportions. Everything from Studio Series 86 has been great so far, but somehow Blurr and Cup aren't up to snuff with the rest. They lack the wow factor that the rest of them have, and trust me, sneak peek for my future reviews, the remaining two Studio Series 86 figures are fantastic, which makes Blurr and Cup stand out more and more like a sore thumb, and more disappointing. But like Cup, there's some enjoyment to be had with Blurr, and he's no way at all a bad toy. However, I can only recommend him if you want a G1 style Blurr and don't have one. If you have the Titans Return Blurr though, you aren't really missing out on much. Unless you don't like the colors of that toy, passing on Studio Series Blurr is a viable option. But if you want to complete the Studio Series 86 line, then go ahead. Again, he's meh. Could have been a whole lot better, especially with what we see from other figures of the line. He'll sit in my collection for now, but I'm just more and more eager to get an official Masterpiece Blurr to replace him. And that's my review on Studio Series Blurr. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, HasLab Unicron's coming. I actually got an email from Hasbro saying that they're really close to shipping them to me. So if you want to see that video, subscribe. Quick plugs, LinkFrost_ on Twitter and Instagram. And you can also check out my gaming channel on YouTube, LinkFrost. If you enjoyed, please feel free to leave a like, leave a dislike if you didn't, share all your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you want to stay tuned for more, subscribe and turn on your notifications to be notified of my next review. Thanks for watching, folks. Stay frosty, roll out. And I'll see you all next time.
話はしない